Have you ever heard of an autopen? I personally had not, but now I have. It's what you're looking at on your screen right now. A pretty ordinary piece of machinery, but now at the center of what some people worry could be the first real, we're going to call it constitutional crisis. That's what some are saying. Autopens, if you don't know, and again, I didn't, these are apparently used by celebrities and politicians who have to sign a whole lot of things very quickly, autographs, documents, you name it. So they're not a new technology, but this controversy, this potential constitutional crisis, to use that term again, it's new. It's new because before President Biden left office, he issued a flurry of presidential pardons to people, including the January 6th committee and also Dr. Anthony Fauci. But then yesterday, President Trump took to Truth Social and said, these pardons are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact that they were done by this new word, autopen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them, but more importantly, he did not know anything about them. The necessary pardoning documents, we're still quoting here, were not explained or approved by Biden. A lot in that. We should note the White House has not backed up that claim about Biden not knowing about these pardons. There's no evidence that we've seen so far. So the big question, all these people pardoned by President Biden, what does it mean for them? We've got just the person here to help us understand what's going on. CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson. Jessica, thank you very much for joining us. By the powers invested in Zoom, I declare you on national TV. Constitutional crisis is a term that I say somewhat with scare quotes. People use it all the time. This feels like the least serious case or test of that question, but it does go to a real core part of the Constitution. Presidents can pardon people. They have that power. Does the next president have the power to revoke a pardon?
No. And so many times I have to say, on the one hand, on the other hand, or the law is complicated. This is a gray area. This is not a gray area. This is not a constitutional crisis, unless President Trump somehow tries to unwind those valid pardons and prosecute people who were protected by pardons. But no, there's not a legal question here. The Office of Legal Counsel back in 2005 said autopen is okay. And the Constitution is a very broad grant of authority to the executive in a lot of different areas. But in this area in particular, it even says to the president, you don't have to work with other people. This is your power and your power alone. It's absolute, it's plenary. There's some little limitations, but autopen, in my view, is not one of them.
So the president talked about the autopen. His press secretary then went on to really say that, what he was really talking about was cognitive decline. Let's play what she had to say.
The president was begging the question that I think a lot of journalists in this room should be asking about whether or not the former president of the United States, who I think we can all finally agree was cognitively impaired.
So there's no evidence of that, of course. But Jessica, with all this mixed messaging, where do we stand now on this question of whether these pardons were valid or Trump has any say in undoing them?
I think we stand in a place where the pardons were issued and therefore they are valid, barring something extraordinary that has never happened in our nation's history. We should be clear that we have never unwound a pardon. There have been accusations that pardons were granted as a result of bribery, and we have not unwound those pardons. Now, this accusation that there was cognitive decline, let's play that out for a minute. So you would need a legal case to say that the pardon was granted, but it wasn't granted voluntarily because the president was so compromised that he essentially didn't know what he was doing. And that's where the autopen comes in, the idea that it wasn't even him signing, basically that somebody put a pen in his hand and said sign. In this case, it was autopen. I think even then we're looking at an extremely hypothetical suit where there's an argument that the president of the United States, the current president, doesn't even have something called standing to bring that case. But there are so many issues right now where I say, we've never been here before, but here's the argument. I think we've never been here before, but there's no argument.
But Jessica, we say rightly that there's no evidence of cognitive decline in the sense of like a medical report or anything like that. But for years, I was covering people's opinions of the decline of President Biden while he was in office. It was widely held that he was impaired by a portion of the electorate. So, I mean, would he have to, is there a case here where there would be a lawsuit and there'd have to be some kind of medical documentation that a judge reviews that says, yep, he was with it?
It's a great question. And I mean, obviously that's the accusation here, but I don't think we even get to that lawsuit. And part of what I want to emphasize is based on the plain language of the Constitution. But part of what I want to say is if this particular administration wants to go and look at the pardon power and say maybe it's actually narrower than what we understand, what they're arguing is that a broad grant of authority for the president should actually be narrowed, or we should look behind it. And I don't think this administration wants to start narrowing the scope of grants of executive power to the president.
Jessica Levinson, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.